My push is for people to dare to do nursing differently, and let's rethink the schedules and how we've always done certain things, because maybe it worked 100 years ago, but things are very different now. So is there an opportunity to do something different that might be more life-giving to nurses? There was always the presence of that nurses eat their young phenomenon, no matter where I went. I learned on my own how to be assertive, how to communicate assertively with what we used to call strong personalities.
How can a nurse recognize that they are burned out?
I am actually a major depression thriver. I crashed and burned from burnout, major depression in 2010, couldn't work for 3 years. Nurses are saying, I feel intense anxiety 24 hours before my next shift. That's a symptom of burnout. Nurses lift each other up. Nurses have each other's backs. Nurses take care of each other. We don't have to wait for leadership or administration or anybody else to come to the table and say, oh my gosh, you can finally start changing the culture. This is something we can do within ourselves. Each individual nurse can step up every day, show up as their best self. Nursing has been a very, very good career for me. I love nursing and I love nurses.
Welcome to the Nurse on Purpose podcast, where we challenge media stereotypes about nursing and spotlight the incredible and diverse roles nurses play in healthcare. I'm your host, Nello. Every week, I'll be joined by a nurse who is reshaping the narrative. From frontline care to leadership, education, innovation, and beyond. Our aim is to show the world that nursing is so much more than what we see on TV. Together, we'll explore how we can collaborate with media and other stakeholders to create authentic and inspiring portrayals of nurses. Let's begin the conversation and ignite change, one episode at a time.
Hello, everyone, and welcome again to the Nurse on Purpose podcast. Have you ever heard that phrase, nurses eat their young? Well, my next guest has actively set out to change that narrative to one where nurses feed their young. Teresa Sanderson is a veteran RN and nursing leader with more than 3 decades of experience in a variety of specialties. In these roles, and now as a nurse entrepreneur, Teresa has learned the importance of leading with authenticity and with the heart of a servant. I love that. She speaks to and educates the staff in hospitals and other healthcare organizations on simple strategies to improve nursing culture so they can improve nursing retention, decrease stress and burnout, and improve the patient experience. It gives me such great pleasure to welcome Teresa Sanderson to the podcast. You're welcome.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much for having me. It's a great honor to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure. So today we're going to be discussing a topic which is near and dear to you, and which I think is so pertinent, and that is the culture of nurses feeding their young. Because, we've heard and we've experienced the other side where, there's this narrative that nurses eat their young. It's the pervasive narrative about nursing, but you're here to promote a different message. Can you just talk to us about the inspiration behind founding the Nurses Feed Their Young movement?
Absolutely. And thank you again, just for asking the question and being open to this discussion. As a nurse with more than 30 years of experience, I experienced nurses eat their young, that phenomenon, as a nursing student. I didn't even get to graduate before I experienced that. And part of me wonders now, all these years later, what kept me in the game as a nursing student when I encountered that kind of behavior, that incivility, hostility, you're in the way, you're not helping kind of culture. So I know that I think sometimes we are shielded from such things, and where we're at in that moment with our own maturity and our own skill sets, right, for coping, that sometimes we can turn a blind eye to such things. Because what I have done, right, here I am in my final semester of nursing school, and I'm experiencing this. Do I want to just throw in the towel now and not move forward with my career, or am I going to go forward? So thankfully, that was never a question in my mind, and I was able to move through. However, what I found was, over all of those decades of working as a nurse in other people's environments, traditional settings, whether it's hospitals, long-term care facilities, whatever it might have been, there was always the presence of that nurses eat their young phenomenon, no matter where I went. And so I learned on my own how to be assertive, how to communicate assertively with what we used to call strong personalities, right? Today we call them bullies. They were strong personalities back in the day. So I learned on the fly how to kind of protect myself and be able to do what I called kind of diffusing the bomb. When somebody like that would come into my space, how can I manage this so that I can protect myself and, emotionally, mentally, psychologically, right, and not feel that I'm less than. And so assertive communication was vital for me to learn early on. And then along with that, as I moved into leadership, it just became even more important. How can I clarify the role of the nurses who work for me so that they can be set up to do a good job? How can I communicate clearly what the expectations are so that they can really perform at the top of their license? And so I learned a lot of different strategies just kind of intuitively along the way about how to feed and support nurses. But I know that I was one, I feel like, of a few, right? And when I say a few, there may be thousands of us across the country, but that's the point. We're all across the country, kind of scattered all around. And so the idea behind Nurses Feed Their Young is to create a space and really just a philosophy of nursing that nurses lift each other up. Nurses have each other's backs. Nurses take care of each other. We don't have to wait for leadership or administration or anybody else to come to the table and say, oh my gosh, you can finally start changing this culture. This is something we can do within ourselves. Each individual nurse can step up every day, show up as their best self. You don't have to love your coworkers, but you show up as a professional. You show up as a professional nurse who's there to do a certain job, fulfill a certain role. And when we can work as professionals, respect is right there. Respect is part of professionalism. And this is where I feel nursing is lacking, is that we've just not fully elevated and stepped into the shoes of professionals, as we should be. We need to own that space.
Absolutely. Wow. That is so wonderful that you mentioned that. Firstly, the strong personality was glorified, right?
Oh, yeah.
But really, that's incivility, that's bullying. It's given a different title. And so people are like, that's just how I am. I just have a strong personality. You just have to deal with it. And it reminds me of, of these Mean Girls movies, like where there's this cheerleader squad and they're really mean to whatever the new girl or whoever that doesn't fit into their category or their mold.
Right.
But people aspire to that because they're young, they're skinny, they're cheerleaders, they're popular, they have the football captain is their boyfriend. And so it's sort of glorified in a way because you're like, yeah, they're mean, they're not very nice, but they're all these other things. And, I love that part of them. But, I really like the idea of taking back our respect and our power and not having to do it with like swords and knives, but with communication, with a cool temperament, and just with mutual respect for one another. That's what it's all about. And I love that you said, when we do that, there's going to be a natural respect that comes along with that. Do you know what I mean? Because there are other disciplines, they regard each other highly. You're like, oh, doctor, this person is coming, and they refer to each other on terms of respect, and they really have admiration for one another. So that's a wonderful message. I think nurses can really benefit from that. So the other thing I wanted to ask is, you talked about bullying and what it was called back then, strong personalities. How can a nurse, right? I know it's funny, especially an early career nurse, recognize that they are being bullied or like the atmosphere is off. Maybe they just feel this is how it's supposed to be. How can they give language to that and say, no, this is bullying?
Great question. Great question. And, the difference is there's a couple of different things. We talk about incivility, workplace incivility, and then we talk about bullying. Incivility And sadly, so many nurses I talk to have experienced incivility. This is the foot stomping, the eye rolling, the heavy sighing that, when a nurse asks a question, whether you're a brand new nurse or a seasoned nurse who's floating to another unit to help out,
Right.
I don't care. I mean, I've had 25 years of experience. Where's the supply room? Come on, guys.
We need to talk
Really?
about where that stems from after this. Go ahead.
Oh my goodness. This is incivility. And incivility, the biggest hallmark of it is that it happens to everybody. Okay. Everybody experiences it. Okay. It's not directed at one person. Bullying, on the other hand, is isolated. And so this is one person singling out one person to really, treat with incivility, hostility, aggressive behaviors, potentially violent behaviors. So bullying is very individualized and isolating. If you're the only one that you see this happening to on your unit, you're probably experiencing bullying. Okay? If one person treats you and you only this way, then that's bullying. However, if the entire unit culture is one of the foot stomping, eye rolling, impatience, all those things, then we just have a very poor culture full of incivility that is being tolerated.
Yes. I love that. Thank you for the definition and clarifying both. Where do you think incivility, bullying, where do you think this stems from? Because you've heard the phrase, hurting people hurt people. So do you think it's due to burnout, due to unsafe staff to patient ratios? What do you think this attitude behavior is coming from?
Excellent question. And in my humble opinion, okay, this was happening more than 34 years ago when I was a nursing student, right? All those years ago, back in the early 1990s, when I was graduating from nursing school, we were talking about nursing shortage. We were already being incentivized for double time shifts. It was already a problem, right? So, in my opinion, here's what's happened over decades of time is that, first of all, seasoned nurses have been exhausted waiting for new nurses to show up all this time, right? Whether that was 30 years ago or today. The seasoned nurses are tired. Can they show up on their A game? Probably not. Full of patience, full of nurturing ability, all these things. They've been working short forever. Thank God you're here. Put your shoes on and run, right?
So don't ask me any questions.
I mean, it's the reality of the thing. But here's what happens over time. I believe that nurses have developed an almost familial-like dysfunction, almost generational familial dysfunction, right? Where I was mentored poorly and received poorly by the seasoned nurses when I was a new graduate. So that's how I learned to treat new nurses when it was time for me to mentor new nurses. And so we have handed this behavior down over generations and over decades. I mean, and that it's been allowed to exist, right? It has been tolerated. It's not like nursing leaders and healthcare administrators don't know that this happens. It's not that they don't know. But here's the other big problem or broken system within the system is the role of our nursing leaders. I will never fault our nursing leaders for not being able to lead and clean up nursing culture when they are constantly pulled out of their leadership roles to fill staffing gaps. I will never fault them, but the system is at fault because nursing leaders, how can they do anything? And they know if I let this person go because they have these lousy behaviors in the workplace, they're being treating others with incivility, they're hostile, maybe they're bullying. If I let them go, then that's another shift I have to fill.
That's right.
See what I mean? We've set nursing leaders up to fail. So yes, it's a persistent problem because we've never addressed it from the top down, bottom up. We just need to make a decision. We need to decide because right now what we're doing is recruiting new nurses to work in the same toxic environments that others are leaving.
Right. and not changing the environment.
No, we're not doing it. We're saying, here's a sign-on bonus. Here's another sign-on
Oh
bonus.
boy.
And they come in the front door and they fall out the back.
Yeah.
It's not working.
This actually reminded me of when I was, doing my fellowship program in pediatrics. I remember that we started off with a huge volume of patients, and we were fellows. And so we were supposed to really be under a protected time and really just have like few patients, have the time to review their cases, read up on their diagnoses and all of that. But we were getting overloaded with patients. And then the system, or I don't know if it was the system, but it was somebody in the work setting was like, well, why don't we give you, a scribe or something? Or why don't we, but we're still going to keep the same number. Like we're still going to keep it to 25 or however many it was. Then I don't remember. And I raised my hand and I was like, excuse me, because I'm usually like on my own, but I just process in my mind and I'm like, no, I have to say something. And so I was like, I have to make an analogy. It's as though somebody told you they were allergic to rice. And everyone was looking at me like, what is she saying? And I was like, okay, well, what about if I put a little gumbo on top of the rice? What about if I add like some sweet and sour chicken to the rice? And what about if I add whatever it is that you love to the rice? And we're like, the rice is still there. I'm still allergic to the rice. And everyone started laughing and clapping because they were like, exactly. You are not dealing with the issue. You are putting all kinds of things around it, giving me a bonus, bringing me some pizza. Please, that's not addressing the issue.
Exactly.
So how is the Nurses Feed Their Young movement and also the Thriving Nurse Network addressing this issue with hospitals and healthcare systems?
I love that question. Thank you for asking. What we're doing is, first and foremost, we are focused on kind of stopping the hemorrhaging of nursing retention that's going on right now. Okay. 33% of new grad nurses leave the profession in the first 2 years. Seasoned nurses are ready to quit. 60% of nurses say they are experiencing signs and symptoms of burnout. The first thing, in my opinion, that needs to happen, I have to go back to like Maslow, right? The hierarchy of needs, food, safety, shelter, security, those kind of things are foundational. Nurses don't feel supported. They don't feel heard. They feel isolated. They feel, they're fearful for their license, their livelihood, all these things. So in my opinion, we begin with support and support from seasoned nursing leaders who value and care and want to mentor other nurses and guide them through. We have really big issues in healthcare. The entire system is broken. So how can we keep nurses in the game today? Because that's the big issue. Yes. Again, it begins with support. It begins with, and I'm not talking about employer-based support. I'm talking about freestanding, nurse-run, nurse-led community that is designed just to support nurses no matter where you work, no matter what you're doing. So you have no fear of retaliation. You have no fear of, oh gosh, somebody's going to think I'm stupid if I ask this question. It's not that. It's a bigger community. It's a bigger community of like-minded nurses who are going to move forward to help nurses do what? Thrive both personally and professionally. I reconnected recently with our nursing audience and just asked them, does this statement resonate with you? And the statement is, I want to find a community to support me to thrive both personally and professionally. 100% of nurses said yes. That resonates with me. That's what I'm looking for. And I think if we think about, all of our professional organizations are exactly that. They're all professional. Nurses want personal and professional support, right? Help me be a good human. Help me be good in my family. Teach me how to manage my time so that I can excel as a woman or man, mother, father, whatever, and also as a nurse. Right? Because nurses, on your day off, can you come in? It's the thing. So how do we thrive personally and professionally when our personal life is many times being intruded upon? How do we do it? And I'm not saying patients don't need care. I'm not saying that either. I'm just saying we have a big problem, and nurses are expected to provide holistic care to the patients they care for. Nurses deserve the same kind of care and treatment. Okay. So Thriving Nurse Network, this is what we are all about, is just supporting nurses the way that they want to be supported. And even the name Thriving Nurse Network was chosen by nurses. It's not the name that we came up with or that I thought was great. It's the name nurses said they wanted. So that's what we're going to give them. That's what we're going to give them so they know that it's theirs. And right now, within the community, we have 25 dedicated nursing experts from all types of specialties in nursing and even from entrepreneurship. Because right now, nurses are stepping up and becoming innovators, solution finders. We're closest to the problems. So we're going to support them in many different ways. We have self-care experts, nurses who have transformed themselves to yoga therapists, teaching somatics, doing all kinds of wonderful things for self-care, but that's meaningful for nurses. This is what we're all about. So it's definitely it's a passion project. It's something that I really value, that I believe in, and that I'm, just willing and committed to the task, because nursing has been a very, very good career for me, not without its challenges, but it's been an excellent, excellent career for me. I love nursing and I love nurses.
Yes, yes. And now you're wanting to give back to them, to pour back into their souls, right? So that there is healing all around. And I think nursing retention is ultimately good for everyone, right? The efforts to retain a nurse is good because we don't have unsafe nurse to patient ratios. Nurses are not overworked. They're not burned out. They can take care of their patients better, which is better for the patients and also better for the system because they are not bleeding out costs left and right because of unsafe practices or medication errors or other medical errors. So it's a great thing for everyone. I do want to talk about how nurses can join the Thriving Nurse Network, and when they come, what is the step-by-step kind of support that they receive. But before I talk about that, I want to ask you, just in the same way I asked you how a nurse can recognize bullying, how can a nurse recognize that they are burned out? Is it just a feeling of tiredness, or what does that word burnout really, really mean?
For anybody who doesn't know, I am actually a major depression thriver. I crashed and burned from burnout, major depression in 2010, couldn't work for 3 years, clawed my way back to recovery, and I'm blessed to have made it to the other side, right? But here's some things that I see. There are social media groups, with full of nurses all over the internet, and nurses are saying, I feel intense anxiety 24 hours before my next shift.
Oh, wow.
That's a symptom of burnout. Yeah. This is not sustainable for a nurse to be feeling that way, right?
Yeah.
Another major symptom would be just insomnia. A lot of nurses are saying, I just can't sleep. My mind races all night long. And a lot of those thoughts are what? Did I give that medication? Did I have that you know what I mean? Did I have that at the right rate?
Emotional commitment to your
Oh my
patients.
gosh,
It's
yes,
real.
yes. So insomnia, little did I know that was the primary symptom of my depression, was that I
Wow.
just couldn't sleep. I couldn't sleep at all. And so I think while we might just say, oh, I'm just having trouble sleeping, it may be bigger than that. If you're drinking some lavender tea, if you're doing some good things, steamy hot bath before bed, and you still can't rest, you need to be evaluating that further, especially if it doesn't get better. If it gets worse or you start having, anxiety or other problems. Depression takes many forms, and I, not that depression is burnout per se, but they are very close. They are very close. And so, kind of lethargy, not being able to get out and do the things that you enjoy doing, just not having the energy that you normally have, having a negative mindset or a negative attitude about, how things are going, how things are going to be, especially if that's unusual for you. I remember back in the early day when I was experiencing some signs of burnout, that I was making my bed one morning and just thinking, is this really all there is? Is this really like all there is to life? And that's very unusual for me. I'm a very optimistic person, and who the heck is saying that? But so it's these little nuances, and then all of a sudden, what happened for me was I just couldn't get out of bed in the morning to go to work anymore. it came on that fast. When it fully came on, I just couldn't get out of bed and go in anymore. So if you're calling in frequently, if you're not able to make your schedule, right? If you find yourself tearful at times or just easily frustrated and irritable about your work situation, and maybe you're just feeling powerless,
No.
those are all signs of burnout.
Thank you so much for
Yeah.
expanding on that and sharing your story. Very grateful that you are
Oh, yeah.
on the other side. And, there's one thing to go through trials, and it's another thing to survive, come out on the other end, and really be a champion for change for others who may be going through the same thing. So I admire you greatly for stepping up and being that voice and that light for other nurses. And is that one of the services that your company provides, is like coaching nurses through that burnout, through that feeling of depression season that they may be going through?
Absolutely. We have, two to four burnout experts in the community, and that's the kind of
Wonderful.
work that they do. Also, when nurses come into the membership, they get our foundational course, and the foundational course is designed to give them some quick wins so that they can begin to thrive personally and professionally. On the professional level, I want them to come in and hear the training on how to say no to anything with grace and ease, right?
Oh,
Because when you are called on your day off,
wonderful.
every day off, every
Yeah.
nurse needs to know, how do I say no?
Yeah.
You know? And so we give them a formula for doing that. I give them my assertive statement formula for how do you deal with conflict in the workplace. When you have that person who's treating you with incivility, hostility, or even bullying,
Yeah.
there's a formula for a statement that you can use. It's my go-to statement. It's what I learned. And I learned it on the fly, so it's time to hand it down, right? These are simple strategies.
Yeah.
But when nurses don't know how to do things and we don't teach them these things, I was really grateful. In my last semester of nursing school, one of our instructors taught us that. How do you say no?
Yeah.
And I
You
thought,
never know that that's going to come in handy until it does.
oh my gosh. Yeah. Little do you know, you're going to pull that one out almost every
Yeah.
day. Yeah.
Like, let me grab my little manual here and tell you no with grace and kindness.
Yeah, exactly. And so we also have in their foundational training some training on how to live with intention. And living with intention is very different than, planning your day with a Google Calendar or something like that. It's very different. It's about what am I going to do? What am I going to do in this day that's going to fill my life with meaningful memories, add quality, that's going to bring me joy, going to help me rest and restore myself, right? There's nothing better than looking at a weekend
Yeah.
and saying, ooh, do I want to take a nap on Saturday or Sunday, and planning that in, right? Who do I choose to spend time with this weekend? Who do I want to visit? What kind of hobby am I going to participate in? Do I want to try a new restaurant? This is it. We
That's
only
it.
get one go around at life.
Yeah. That's
And
right.
we only get one go around. And so we need to be filling our time with quality, but nobody teaches us how to manage our two most valuable resources, our time and our money.
Yeah. Yeah.
Nobody teaches us these things. And I learned intentional living. This was part of my recovery from depression, and I will never stray from it again.
That's
What I learned through that process was, in my role as a nurse, I lived the majority of, 25 plus years out of alignment with what I value most. My family, time with my family.
Yeah.
Right? So, and there's so much about nursing that's just, nursing is what it is. But right now, my push is, for people to dare to do nursing differently. And let's rethink the schedules and how we've always done certain things, because maybe it worked 100 years ago,
Yeah.
but things are very different now.
Yes.
Things are very different now. So
Yes.
is there an opportunity to do something different that
Yes.
might be more life-giving to nurses, right?
Yeah.
So just
Dare to
rethink.
do nursing differently.
My
Wow.
mantra.
That is a mantra that captures it so powerfully. Just you talking about living with intention, you kind of gave a different definition to it, right? People think it's like you have to have these big to-do lists to conquer the world.
Mhm.
But even saying, I'm going to sleep for these many hours,
Yep.
rest is a productive activity,
Oh,
guys. Don't
yeah.
ever don't ever downplay the value of giving your body rest, because a lot of times, like you talked about the incivility, some of that just comes from not having enough rest.
Hmm.
Yes, it comes from that culture, but it sometimes you just need to sleep. I
Hmm.
remember when I had my baby and I was tired all the time. You know, you get snappy, you get irritable. And the days I would sleep really well, I realized that my mood was totally different. So just thinking about your rest and giving your body a break, so key and so important.
Absolutely. And I think, when I think about how we manage our time, probably
Hmm.
really just as Americans, right? I think we spend more time thinking about what we're going to put in our suitcase for a 2-day weekend or a 3-day weekend than we do thinking about the brand new year with 365 glorious days coming our way. How are we
Yeah,
going to fill that time? That's
yeah,
how I think of my years now. I look at
yeah.
it at the very beginning and I decide how many times I'm going to see my parents. How many times will I see my siblings? How many
Love it.
vacations will we take? What home
Yeah,
improvements will we do? I mean, we look at everything. Where do we want to
yeah,
vacation? All
yeah,
those things so that, gosh, at the end of the year, we look back and say, wow, that was
yeah,
really something, other
yeah.
than where did the year go?
Yeah. And I
Right?
can tell because you glow from the inside out. I just look at your face and I'm like, she is glowing, but it's not only physical. It really comes from a joy within.
It
So I'm
does.
grateful that you actually overcame and you're teaching and you're helping other people so that their lives can grow and glow as well. Two last questions for you.
Sure.
Well, I guess last is last, but two questions for you. And then we'll transition into our media portion of the episode. How can people join the Thriving Nurse Network if they wanted to?
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, you can definitely just go to the Nurses Feed Their Young website and you'll
Okay.
be able to find Thriving Nurse Network right there. You can also connect with me on social media, on my LinkedIn pages and my Facebook business page. There's a link there to sign up for Thriving Nurse Network. We would love to have you join us and be a part of it. There's just a wealth of knowledge, support, and community available. So many resources.
Thank you. And my final question is, what is your hope for the future of nursing and, workplace culture? What is your hope?
Oh my gosh. Wow. First, my 5-year vision is that we have a certification for a nurse culture champion that's available from Nurses Feed Their Young, and it would involve special training in communication, leadership, as well as just growing culture, that type of thing, so that we would have this certification and that it would be so sought after that every employer would want to have at least one on every unit in their hospital. That's that's a grand vision because if we have these people literally planting the flag and saying this is how it is around here. This
Yes.
is the new standard.
This is the
This is what
new
we do
culture.
here, right?
Yeah.
This is
Yeah.
what we do.
Yeah. Out with the
That's a
old.
yeah, that's a really big goal. But also, my vision is that overall the healthcare system gets transformed to one that is now life giving and meaningful for nurses through input from nurses. And
Mm,
I talked with Kathleen Bartholomew recently, and she's just such
mm,
an expert in this space. And she said, Teresa, we really need this two-loop system to make the change happen. And she said, loop
mm.
number one, this is where we sustain the nurses who are in the game now. And
Yes.
that's where Thriving Nurse Network kind of fits in, is in
Yes.
loop number one, to
Yeah.
sustain the nurses you have right now, while loop number two continues fixing all of the broken healthcare system. Does that
Yes.
make sense? But if we
Yes.
don't stabilize these, we will
Mm.
never be able to move them into the new space
Yeah.
that's being prepared for them.
Mhm.
So that's the grand vision, is that we've stopped the bleeding. Nursing is a profession. They see themselves as professionals. They are elevated
Mm.
and valued as the professionals they are.
Mm.
And they're solving the world's problems in healthcare, right? They have a
So
voice and they're doing it.
that's wonderful. I can think of no better person to champion this cause as one of the pillars to champion this great cause than you. So I stand in admiration, and I am I'm so happy that you've chosen this as one of your life's missions, because it's extremely needed in nursing. So let's transition and talk about the media portrayals of nursing with our last 5 minutes to go.
Okay.
Um, do you have any thoughts about how nurses are portrayed in media? And if you do, would you share them with us?
Sure. Well, I think sometimes nurses, I see kind of two different things that happen here. The subservient nurse that is
Mm,
just, subservient to the physician and yes sir, no sir, that kind of thing, and just very kind of old school. But then I
mm,
also see on the flip side, in some of the modern TV dramas, I see nurses and nurse practitioners almost doing too much within
mm,
their within their scope of practice, right?
mhm.
So we kind of have this side and we have that side, but neither one is really accurate. Neither
Mm,
one really, reflects what a nurse does,
mhm,
how we think, how we collaborate.
mhm,
We're like the connection among all of the departments within the hospital.
mm,
It all hinges on the nurse who sees the patient the most.
mhm,
And so I believe we could do a better job, definitely, of portraying nurses. I think nurses long to see an accurate
mhm.
portrayal of
Your
what the work
portrayal.
looks like.
Yes, we
And
all do.
what's it like to question a physician's order? And what's it like
Yeah,
to, the
yeah.
real things that
The
happen,
real
and how do
things.
how
Yeah,
do professional nurses
yeah.
handle such things,
And that
right?
nurses aren't only at the bedside. Like, we've never seen a
Yes.
nurse outside of a hospital setting or in a
Yep.
boardroom or as a CNO or as a
Yep.
coach. It's only
Exactly.
ever that one facet.
Yep.
So thank you so much for that. We're going to play our game so we can wrap up. Are you ready for this game?
I think so.
She's like, just shoot me with it. Let's go. Okay, so I'm going to pick out a genre from my handy dandy jar. And
Okay.
then when I do, you'll tell me the plot line of a show, a book, whatever it is I pick out that features a nurse or a nurse lead. Okay. So
Okay.
this is Teresa's own show that you create,
Mm,
because we've talked about the problems. Now we want to talk about some solutions. And I like to do it in this way.
okay.
Okay. So let's shake this around. Pick one out. Okay. It's medical
Oh
drama.
man, medical drama. Let me see.
Let's go.
All right. So, in my medical drama, there is a young nurse within her first few years of practice, and her name is Carolyn.
Mm,
Carolyn is very sharp. She checks and double checks everything. She's very thorough in the work that she does. She's working in a traditional hospital setting, and she's well liked, among her peers, and she communicates well, with everyone. However, one day when she's really busy, she makes a medical error, and she's just, oh my gosh, this is like the end of my career. And thankfully, it was, it's a medication error, but it was quickly reported. She self-reported, and the good news is that the pharmacist immediately gave her some strategies on what to do with that medication error. She notified the physician. The physician was on board with the nurse managing this thing. So while it's a negative situation, she has a positive experience with
mm,
it. She has a positive experience with it,
mm.
and she doesn't ever feel threatened by having made the report.
Yeah.
Okay. So she doesn't feel threatened by that. And later, she's called into her manager's office,
Mm,
you know, for the full incident report, the whole thing. Let's do a debriefing and all of that. And she's called in for that. And, her supervisor says, Carolyn, it was an extremely busy day today. Tell me in your own words, tell me what happened, how you think this came to occur, and what do you think you might do differently next time?
mm,
And so Carolyn goes through all of that, and she's able to talk it through with her supervisor. And, there's no punishment. Nothing like that occurs for her. Instead, she's given, she's going to take a remedial course or something like that to assist, but that she just has a good experience with it. So very unlike what we see and hear sometimes about such errors. So
Yay! I love that. You were quick. That was on the fly. And
I
you
don't know how
delivered.
dramatic it is, but
No, that is perfectly fine. I think that would make for a wonderful episode of a show. Some of the medical dramas that are usually fixated on physicians and their role. It would really make for a portrayal of the nursing life, parts of it at least. So that's wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing that.
you are welcome.
All right. So we have pretty much come to the close of our episode. Again, I appreciate you being here, talking us through your journey and just the incredible things that you're doing for nurses. This is going to be game changing for us. And then we've already talked about where we can find you. Nurses Feed Their Young is the website. And Teresa's also on LinkedIn. I will put all of that information in the show notes. Is there anyone that you would recommend as a guest on the show? I think you already mentioned a name, but I don't want to assume.
Yeah, I would definitely recommend. There are several. Nina Hart is actually the president of the National Nurses and Business Association. I definitely recommend her. And I would also recommend Damian Jenkins. He has a business called The Nurse Speak, but he helps nurses prepare for NCLEX, especially if they've not been successful in passing it the first time. He helps and mentors those nurses to get through. So, yeah.
Wonderful. So it's Nina Hart and Mr. Damian Jenkins. I will be reaching out to you. Thank you so much for that recommendation. Guys, I appreciate you always stopping by to listen. This has been a phenomenal episode with Teresa Sanderson and Nurses Feed Their Young. Until next time, bye-bye.
Thanks for hanging with me till the end. I hope you gained some valuable insight into the world of nursing. If today's episode inspired you, please like, subscribe, and share with someone who needs to hear about the amazing work nurses are doing. Let's keep breaking stereotypes and reshaping the narrative together. I'll see you next time.